Gentlemen, the time has come once again to discuss things.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentlemen. I am Sid Part 2. Joining me today is...
A Geek for Fun.
And Steve Baxi.
I know those guys.
Somehow.
Today we're here to do a review of quite an old movie now. It's 30-year-old movie now? 95?
Came
right?
out in 1995, so yes.
Yeah, 30-year-old movie now, Batman Forever, starring Val Kilmer, Tommy Lee Jones, and Jim Carrey, directed by Joel Schumacher. This was the first of the Schumacher Batman movies. Famously, the studio was really bothered by the parental reaction to Batman Returns, so they asked Tim Burton to make a more toned-down, kid-friendly version, and he said... no. And they're like, well, can we still use your name as producer on the next movie? Do I have to do anything? No. Then sure. And then Joel Schumacher made a Batman movie, which was way more kid-friendly and very different tone. I know before the hiatus, a couple months before or whatever, we did a review of Batman Returns, and Alfie and I talking in that were like, yeah, no, I get everything you're saying, Steve. It is really cool and interesting that it's such like a creative vision, but I just don't like it, and I do prefer Batman Forever, and so it's kind of funny coming back to it maybe a year or so later to talk about Batman Forever and just how it stands. Personal anecdote on this is I decided out of the blue to watch this movie one night a couple weeks back now. And it took me 2 nights to get through the movie, and by the second night, the news about Val Kilmer's passing had broken. So it was kind of an interesting timing for me personally, just watching this in that way. But yeah, it's an interesting relic of a film. I remember being a kid when this came out, and I had some of the toys from it. I think I had the Batmobile toy from this. And I'm pretty sure I had either the Batcave that was released from this or the from Batman and Robin. And so I remember it vaguely as a kid, but I don't really remember much of what it was about or what was going on or how I felt about it during watching it, except that being a 90s kid, Jim Carrey was the funniest person alive, and honestly still is. So I remember enjoying him, but that was about the most of the personal history I had with this from childhood. Once I was a teenager, and you had the Nolan trilogy out, or half of it out. I remember looking down on this one quite a bit and thinking, it's just not good, it's really stupid, blah blah blah, it's way too over the top, the neon looks so stupid. And now, another 10-15 years later, I've very much come around, and while I'm not going to sit here and say it's the perfect movie, I will still stand by that I do quite enjoy this film, and it's easily my favorite of this franchise of Bat films. And not to say that I don't still like things about Batman and Robin, but I 100% if I watch Batman and Robin, I'm laughing at it a lot more. Whereas this one, I definitely feel I'm laughing with it more, if that makes sense. But I've been talking for a whole fucking long time, so what are you guys' thoughts on Batman Forever?
So I'm pretty much right there with you, Ian. One thing for me, with like personal history wise, is this and the Batman the Animated Series little like episode of Robin's Reckoning were my two big Batman formation things. So I had the VHS of this, and I had the VHS of that. And when I went to my dad's at the weekend, I would replay those like eternally. So I would just have the origin of Robin as my introduction to Batman constantly as one of my earliest memories. So I'm very fond for this movie to begin with before we even go into it. But I wanted to have a fresh rewatch. It had been a while since I've seen it, so I rewatched it. I rewatched all the deleted scenes that are available publicly for like the fabled Schumacher cut. And then I looked at some interviews. I looked at some like early press. I tried to be as thorough as possible because I think with the passing of both Schumacher and Val Kilmer now, I think is complete a retrospective you can do of this film and kind of its legacy when with this detached from it now. One thing I do want to say up front before I let Steve talk, really funny little tidbit that leads from your point about how like scared they were after Batman Returns. So there was like a panel of children that they asked about Batman Returns and how it made them feel. And there was like a junior like movie critic kid, he could have been like 13, 12 years old. And they said, what was your thoughts on Batman Returns? And he says, I thought it was an attack against children. And they should put that on every Blu-ray of Batman Returns, because that's a banger.
That's a great way to sell that movie, an attack on children.
So, like, they had that, and then Schumacher was they were well-read. They wanted to do a Batman Year One movie with Keaton, and Keaton was like, oh, that'd be sick. And then they weren't allowed to because they wanted a sequel, not a prequel. And then they managed to get away with squeezing in some Dark Knight Returns imagery into this, which we'll talk about later, which I think is really, really cool. But those are two little tidbits up front that I thought I'd throw at you because I thought they were really funny.
Dope. How about you, Steve? What are your general thoughts on Batman Forever before we get into the nitty-gritty here?
When I was a kid, I just barely missed this because I was too young. So Batman and Robin was the movie that was coming out when I was growing up. So I had the Schumacher vision in my mind for a really long time. Kind of like you, Ian, I've gone back and forth on a lot of these movies. As a kid, I loved all of them, with the exception of Returns, because Returns scared me because it was an attack on children and I was terrified. I thought that was being attacked. But then growing up in like the YouTube critic space, everyone would shit on these movies constantly. So I was getting kind of like vicariously through them starting to really shit on these movies. And then when I grew up and started thinking on my own, I had my own opinion about these movies. I rewatched all of them in the lead up to the Batman like 2 or 3 years ago. And my feelings sort of solidified a little bit more, where I really like Batman 89 and I love Batman Returns. And then I wasn't really vibing with Forever or Robin. And so in this most recent rewatch, I still don't really vibe with this movie. There's a lot of things about it that feel to me like they're riffs on ideas in Batman 89 and Batman Forever that I like a lot more and that feel more fleshed out in those movies to me. And there's just a lot of stuff about Schumacher's directing and the editing that really bothers me. On like a sort of like generic Batman level, I think the movie's fine. On a kind of craft nitty-gritty level, I feel like it's really kind of amateurish and it really frustrates me when I'm watching it. So I don't love this movie. I think a lot of it just sort of comes down to, even if Schumacher got his cut, I don't think the material he shot would have made a substantially better movie. But I do think it's better than Batman and Robin. I think Batman and Robin's biggest problem is, like, even if you're laughing with it, it just kind of goes on too long and it's a little boring. Relative to Forever, which I think Forever has a much more frenetic pace, so you can kind of get through it a lot quicker. I don't like this anywhere near as much as Batman 89 or Batman Returns. I don't really like the movie at all, to be honest. I like things about it, but that's about it.
No, I mean, that's fine. Let's start with the negatives and see if we can go around and come back to some positive stuff. So, I think one thing we can all agree on is the casting for Robin in this is really, really bad.
Yeah, it's terrible.
So
It's atrocious.
bad.
It's atrocious.
He has
Not that
no
the actor
chemistry
is
with
bad.
Kilmer at all.
Yeah, I mean, the acting and the chemistry is one thing, but just right out the gate, the age is just horrendous for this. Which is so funny because as I was watching through it, I was, sending out some thoughts, and there's just this scene with Chris O'Donnell, is that it?
Yeah.
Where he's, driving around in the Batmobile to pick up chicks, which is great. Like just close your eyes and imagine this happens in like a Robin Year One comic with Dick Grayson being like 12 or 13 years old, right? Driving around the Batmobile to pick up chicks, top tier, awesome teenager thing to do. Fucking 20-year-old man? No, not so cool. Kind of a dick move.
Funny, he's older than Alfred. He's 30.
He's driving around picking up chicks, and then he sees this chick getting harassed, so he gets out to try to fight the gang. Again, on a story level, absolutely perfect, and that's one of the things where the age doesn't matter for the character. And he manages to take out a good portion of gang members on his own, 4 or 5 guys just by himself with his circus kung fu, and that's dope. And then they just whistle, and the whole fucking gang comes out, and he just doesn't know what to do, so he starts trying to get away and parkour fight his way out of there. And then actual Batman shows up, and he doesn't even hit anyone. They all just run away. And I'm like, that's such a good fucking Batman moment. That just Chris O'Donnell, being this 20-year-old man, doesn't sell the context of the scene, You put that moment in a comic with a young Dick Grayson, and it just would hit so damn hard.
A big problem with Chris O'Donnell's Robin in this is I really genuinely think he shows up in the movie way too late. It's a good 30 to 40 minutes before we get to the circus, and the movie's only about 2 hours long. So they get a big 10-minute action sequence in the circus where you first meet Robin, and then after that he's only kind of in a handful of scenes, so you don't really get a chance to see any of their dynamic really develop. Bruce and him have a bit of bickering, and he kind of sells him on staying by fixing up the motorcycles in the garage. That never really goes anywhere, because then immediately after that he steals the Batmobile. He does the most insane parkour stunt ever to get into a door to discover that Bruce is Batman. But there's so little time of just Dick being bored in the mansion or having conversations with Bruce to where any of that feels like it's grounded in a real relationship, to the point where at the end when Bruce shakes his hand and he says he's a partner, I just don't buy that at that point. I just don't think these two guys have talked enough for that to be a thing.
I agree with you on.
I definitely agree.
I think there's a larger point with the pacing of that, and I agree with completely. I think one of the things with this movie that I think, because I agree with your point earlier as well about I don't think that Schumacher cut would change this movie, and as someone who enjoys it quite a lot, I agree with that as well. I feel it's not that big of a difference. There are some things I'd rather keep, but that's every movie, right? I think at the end of the day, the movie is still the movie. There's just some good tidbits. The pacing of this and what is chosen to be focused on, I definitely think if I could get rid of a couple Tommy Lee Jones scenes so I could get some more Robin scenes, that'd be much appreciated. But I also don't think it's that, because the entire movie works on this heightened, you're moving from one scene to the next, every character is kind of talking in comic book metaphor and their motivations are very clear. I don't think you need slow scenes with Dick in the mansion in the same way. I get that it would be nice, but I don't think that would drastically change them. I think the biggest issue is the casting, and I think if it was a different actor and the scenes remained exactly the same, the dialogue remained exactly the same, it was just noticeably younger, I think any issues people have would be completely thrown away. I legitimately do believe, just as presented, just casting a younger guy would fix 99% of the problems.
I disagree with you in a little bit on that, because I think casting Chris O'Donnell or casting someone like Chris O'Donnell is the perspective the script is written from and how the movie is made. Like, there's the scene where he's folding laundry, but like there's that weird sort of martial artsy background noise when he's just folding laundry for some reason. Like,
yeah,
he's not even doing it cool. He's just folding laundry. Like, there's that.
But Steve, he wrings out the towel with his toe.
He's
awesome.
just doing fucking laundry. I don't know, but he's just doing laundry, except in a cool guy laundry sort of way. And you've got, like, again, the bikes in the garage sort of scene. I think the movie is really clearly written for a version of Robin that's not only supposed to be older, but is supposed to be like MTV 90s era cool guy. You know, like this version of the character as written feels to me like the Batman world you're getting is a very sort of elevated 60s Batman world. But Robin, as the cool young counterpart, the kid in the relationship of the older thing, is supposed to be a really present tense, today's cool guy. So you've got an older school world in Batman and Tommy Lee Jones, but you've got a very 90s MTV era Robin to create that contrast. And even if you didn't have Chris O'Donnell in that role, I think whoever they were going to cast, they wrote those scenes with that kind of personality in mind. And I'm not 100% convinced that those two things jive.
I agree, and I think obviously the idea would be younger, but I feel like even just like someone who looks 17 or 16 would fit both of that, and it'd be a nicer mesh. I think Chris O'Donnell just looks older than his actual age is also part of the issue.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he doesn't necessarily even look the age of the MTV guy. He looks older than that. With how I think the shaved head doesn't do him any favors and stuff like that. I think a lot of that adds to it. But I get your point completely.
He was about 24, 25 when the movie was being filmed and released, because he was born in 1970 and it came out in 1995.
Okay, so yeah, he is in his 20s, and I think I agree with Alfie. You just want someone who's about that, like, you know, 18 or like 15 to 18 kind of range. I think could have worked for this. Whether or not the scenes were written for that, I don't know, but it just doesn't work. And like, in all fairness to the movie itself, this is not an exclusive to Batman Forever thing. Hollywood does this all the time, where young characters are not played by actors in anywhere near the same age bracket.
Mm-hmm.
For some fucking reason. You know, Scary Movie 1 or 2, whatever, has this, you know, that fucking great joke of, oh, I mean, if this were like a shitty horror movie, we'd all be played by actors in their mid-20s trying to pass for teenagers. It's just consistently we do that shit for some fucking reason. Like, God, for some reason, you have actors like Macaulay Culkin who could not get a goddamn role for like 10 to 15 years of their life because they weren't a child anymore, but they weren't a 20-year-old suitable to play a teenager.
I mean, even just a few years after this movie, right? You've got Smallville, which starts with the pilot of Clark Kent being a freshman in high school, and Tom Welling is 25.
Yep. Exactly.
He is finished college age before he starts his first day of high school.
You know? It just happens.
It's really funny, yeah.
And there's like a wider conversation about why we do that, and also like deeply sexualize those characters, but you know, that's not the topic of discussion tonight. So yeah, I think we can all agree that like the Robin casting and some of the writing around him is probably the point at which this movie has a real downfall. I think kind of inarguably, and it's interesting when you learn more of the history of the production of the film, everything about Tommy Lee Jones' Two-Face is just a hot fucking mess.
Yeah.
In this film. So for those that didn't know, Tommy Lee Jones was cast and written for Two-Face to be like the more serious, scary kind of villain. And I will say, watching the beginning of this movie with my 4-year-old, that first scene with him and the security guard where he's like going on his monologue, and he just like, you get that really fucking scary shot of him when you first see the scarred up side of his face. Yeah, that worked, and that was scary and off-putting, but in like a cool way. But then she quickly gets over it as he just gets more and more zany throughout the course of the film, because apparently he didn't want to be upstaged by Jim Carrey. Because, that's something I think every actor can relate to, of, oh, Jim Carrey's in this movie? Well, I better try to act more crazy so I can match his energy.
His exact quote was, "I can't sanction your buffoonery."
So he acts that way. I don't get it. So there's all these, like, stories of Schumacher giving Tommy Lee Jones like direction, and Tommy Lee Jones just ignoring it as they do take after take after take. Which just, we don't, I feel like we don't have stories like this anymore in modern Hollywood productions, because that's just so insane to me.
It is the kind of thing where, like, Tommy Lee Jones can get away with it because he's Tommy Lee Jones and no other reason, I feel like. Because if you cast anyone else as Two-Face in that role, unless they were also A-list Tommy Lee Jones status, no one was going to have that.
Yeah, probably not. So it's weird because I've always loved the introduction scene with the character. It, like, immediately gets more wacky, especially with the security guard. There's boiling acid! It gets more wacky instantly, but, like, Two-Face himself is, certainly over the top, but not, like, to the levels that he gets throughout the course of the film. The introduction from the bank robbery to crashing into the Statue of Gotham Liberty, I think is all pretty solid stuff, pretty fun introduction for the film. But yeah, just as the movie goes on and Two-Face just tries to be wackier than Jim Carrey as the Riddler, just gets messier and messier.
And
so
with the two villains, a big problem I have is Two-Face as, like, the beginning cold open kind of bad guy is fine. As the movie gets going, it seems really clear that, like, thematically, the Riddler is the main villain. He's the kind of linchpin of the story. And every time they have him and Two-Face together, Two-Face is entertaining, don't get me wrong, but it really does feel like Riddler is the character you're supposed to care about, and he keeps getting distracted from because Two-Face is there. And I really wish that there was more time devoted to just Jim Carrey being Jim Carrey Riddler and using that to parallel the whole repressed memory things with Bruce, because those two things are so plot related and so connected. And Two-Face at that point just doesn't feel like he factors in, because Chase Meridian has, like, some really basic psychobabble about trauma. But, like, you can just say that about anything. You don't need Two-Face for that.
The one thing I'll argue for why I do think, despite the kind of the disaster class of Tommy Lee Jones here, that I do think it comes together and works, is purely on the strength of how well Carrey and Kilmer kind of, like, parallel each other, where I feel like you have the arc of the Riddler in this wants to be this fractured figmentation of Bruce Wayne that he thinks is, like, the ultimate dude that doesn't exist. And so by doing that, he has to kind of also interact with people that Batman interacts with. Like, he has to interact with Chase Meridian, he has to interact with Two-Face. And Two-Face in this isn't necessarily his own villain. Two-Face in this is, like, the embodiment of the average crime that Batman has to fight, which I think is a cool idea, that you have a supervillain in something that just tries to kill him a bunch. Like, that's something that's very comic booky, where, like, you just have that whole sequence where, like, Two-Face has that bit where he's disguised as the old lady and they have the cool car chase. And that just exists to establish that Batman and Two-Face are still going after each other and there's no resolution, which is, like, that never happens in movies. Like, that's always just a comic, like, one-off issue. Oh, that villain's still at large. by having Riddler come into that and then change the dynamic by exerting his own force over it, he gets to have power over Two-Face, and he gets to again feel like he's living into these larger than life shoes, despite it being so hollow. By at the end of the movie, when he's confronted with like the depth of the truth of Bruce Wayne, he just screams in horror. Like, I think a lot of that is brought together, that despite how I agree with you, I'd rather have more Jim Carrey scenes. Who wouldn't? He's at the peak of his powers here, but I think it does work based on he's there to serve a function for both Batman and Riddler in this, and he does it not well, but he does serve it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't mind it. I think it's also interesting to do the two villain dynamic in a way that's helping to further the other characters in the drama, being that Two-Face becomes more of the focus of Robin as a character. And I think that makes a lot of sense, and because we've been so afraid to do sidekicks in movies since Batman and Robin after this, we're really afraid to tackle something like that. It's not that there aren't other movies with multiple villains, but getting to really go into that partnership thing and have a villain for each character just seems something that we're not as interested or willing to do, and I kind of like that, just not necessarily on an execution level, but again, just on an idea level. I think that's a lot of fun. So, alright, Two-Face. Let's start to move to some of the more, like, gray area here. Is it a positive? Is it a negative? Is it a mixed bag? Let's talk about Jim Carrey
can I,
as the Riddler.
Before we do that, can I give, like, my big, like, genuine, this is the thing about the movie that I causes me to not like it first?
I know where Steve's going with, some guys bringing it up, because I know I have a rebuttal. Good, continue.
Okay, alright. So, my big problem with this movie and why I don't enjoy it is if you ignore the fact that it's got multi-million-dollar movie stars in it, it feels like and is shot like a TV show and a made-for-TV movie. There's a lot of revisionism with this particular like series of Batman movies. Like, people go back and forth every few years over 89 and Returns and Forever and End Robin and whatever. And thanks to the DCEU and the MCU, I don't think anyone is convinced that Batman and Robin is the worst superhero movie of all time anymore, right? Like, we've changed our minds on all of these movies. I think Batman Forever really benefits from a bad behavior we have of, if you take a screenshot of something and post it on Twitter, you can be like, look at how pretty this is. But when you put it inside the context of the movie you're watching, it doesn't work that way. Because a shot in a movie is not a screenshot. It's a living thing that has to breathe. My big problem with this movie is Joel Schumacher and whoever the editor is have made this experience so choppy and so cutty and so jumpy. And Schumacher himself does so many close-ups and doesn't even really attempt any sort of like blocking with multiple actors that the whole thing watches to me like a TV movie. So much of the action is jumping back and forth at angles in directions that are not very coherent. And so much of the dialogue is just talking head dialogue. There's so little of medium shots. There's so little of composing a scene where multiple actors are allowed to move in and around a frame. There's a really beautiful Gotham and production design in the background of this movie, but so the average shot length of this movie is like literally a second and a half. And so you get to see so little of that. There's a few shots like when Bruce is going to see Chase Meridian, and there's this kind of like Dutch angle thing where you see like the infinite loop of columns behind him. And that would be really cool if you could just like hold on that for a few seconds and like really kind of swallow that moment and then frame the rest of the scene around what that shot is trying to tell us. But Schumacher doesn't really do that. My biggest problem with this movie at the end of the day is like, script good or bad or not, on a sort of like a basic craft level, it just feels so poorly executed from like the editing to the cinematography that I just have a hard time watching it because I get so visually bored since there's so much noise happening without any sort of like coherent, slow shots to tell the story. And when you compare that to what Burton's able to do with very limited resources relative to Batman and Forever and Batman and Robin, where he's not doing anything he hasn't done before in his smaller budget movies. He's just applying a Batman filter over it. And it's like night and day. It's like Burton is directing circles around Joel Schumacher in that respect.
I mean, I think that's fair because I think just end of the day, Tim Burton's a better director than Joel Schumacher.
Yeah.
I'll let Alfie go in just a second, but
No
I just
worries.
want to say, for what it's worth, I do agree that we don't really spend a lot of time on any one shot, and that kind of hurts the pacing of the film. But I also do actually really like a lot of the visuals presented in the movie, whether or not they get to linger long enough. And it is very striking to watch this movie in a post-MCU world where just everything is so gray and washed out. And that isn't entirely the MCU's fault. Certainly, Zack Snyder had the opportunity to present a bold cinematic vision, and he did, but it's all with, fucking sepia tones and shit. So to just see a movie that's this fucking colorful with superheroes is such a weird vibe that it
The
just kind of works
standards used
for
to
me.
be a lot higher, yeah.
Yeah, it's just so much fun to see the neon aesthetic. It feels very 90s. You could not mistake what decade this film was made in.
For sure.
Alfie, you go ahead.
So, Steve messaged me while he was watching this, specifically about that critique, and I was like, oh, I think I remember the editing being kind of choppy as well, but I don't get what he means about the cinematography being cheap. I'll keep an eye out for that when I watch it. So I watched it with that specifically in mind. I was very paying attention to that. I even counted down on some things just to make sure. And he's full of shit. Like, the average shot in this movie is about 3.5 seconds. That's more than The Dark Knight with how long it lingers and stuff.
No, absolutely
yes,
not. You might be talking about when people
Look it
are
up.
just talking to each
No,
other.
look
Sure.
it up. Look it up. Look it up right now. I swear to God, look it up right now. I wouldn't have said it if I didn't fact check it. Look that shit up right now. It's longer than The Dark Knight per shot.
Okay, let's even say, right, that we'll give you the amount of seconds per shot. Tell me that The Dark Knight doesn't do more with how much is in frame compared to this movie. Because it absolutely
I think so.
does.
But I don't think it's
that's
that
the essence,
drastically.
That's the essence of my critique, though, right? Is like, my biggest problem with Joel Schumacher is when things are in frame, you're supposed to tell a story with the objects moving in frame, and he just does not do that. Every shot for him is a transition to get to the next moment, and every dialogue scene is a very sort of standard shot of the character's head talking, and there's no dynamism to it at all. So, like, there is no attempt at, like, real blocking in this movie at all. There's no sort of, let's put the camera here and let's have the actors move through different marks inside the depth of the frame to create a dynamic shot. There's, like, none of that. Everything is very flat.
I'll give you 2 examples right now to disprove that, and also another thing to back this up. Just as a side note, this movie got a nomination for Best Cinematography. None of the Batman films got a nomination.
Okay,
for
dude,
so.
Bohemian Rhapsody won Best Editing. That doesn't mean anything.
I mean, I'm just saying it's something this has got that those don't. I'm just saying it helps my argument is all. Argument is all. It just helps my argument is all. That's all.
It
you
does,
can pick
it
what you
does
like. But on actual scenes that we've watched, 2 things I'll give example. When Riddler is in his like gorgeously designed apartment and it's that long narrow space, we spend a lot of time with that, and it immediately informs his character for how he moves through it, and then how he moves through Two-Face's space, and you've got the 2 halves, and he goes back and forth to the wall, to the center when he's in power. I think there's an immediate example that disproves your point. Now, is Batman Forever the most masterpiece piece of cinematography in the world? No, I think Burton is a better director than Schumacher is. I think Nolan is a better director than Schumacher is. But I think this movie has really good cinematography, and I think the pacing of it, especially compared to the time period and what they were going for, with it being this kind of panel to panel comic living experience, right? And Schumacher is a director that wants to cast very pretty people, and so he wants to spend a lot of time on their faces. And then once you want to do the action scenes and pan out, you can clearly see everything. Everything's engaging. Batman interacts with the world very nicely. I feel like there are a lot of angles to attack this movie, and I don't want to change your opinion on it, but I feel like it, as someone who really enjoys the look of this movie and how much work was put into making this look as good as it does, I do want to be the person who kind of puts his dick out and defends the cinematography Batman Forever. I'm happy
Alfie,
to have
for the
that
last
rival.
time, put your dick away.
No!
Put it away, Alfie.
A dead gay man needs me.
we can move on, but I'll just say really quick to your Riddler apartment example, that was a specific scene that I wrote down in my notes of, I love the set design of this. God, I wish there was a competent director shooting it.
Damn. I don't know, that's an interesting one. I'm tempted now to watch Batman Forever again with like a fucking stopwatch and a pad of paper.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, like, so here's my thing, right? I'm not trying to be the sort of like super technical, this is how you make a movie by the textbook rule kind of guy. I'm not saying that definitively the shot length is 0.15 seconds or whatever. What I'm saying is, as I'm watching the movie, my experience of it is
just feels
every
too
time
quick,
I look at a scene and I see an interesting composition, it immediately cuts to a completely unrelated one and it doesn't feel satisfying to me.
No, I think that's fair. And that's, obviously that's like your mileage may vary. Personally, I didn't feel off-put by that. I would agree that the pacing is very quick, which, if you know me, you know I can't stand a long fucking movie, so I appreciate when things are fast-paced. So I really enjoy the fast pace of this one, and again, I think... So here's like just a basic take on this film from me. If Steve's going to talk about, this is the thing that made me definitively hate this movie, this is the thing that makes me definitively like this movie. How nice is it to have a Batman film that's just fun? Like, I don't think anyone working on this film before or after thought they were trying to make, like, really groundbreaking storytelling or visual media or whatever. They're just like, let's just make a fun fucking movie that's for kids. And I really, really appreciate that about the movie. And I know, like, I'm probably pretty alone in that take in some ways, but I don't know, I just really appreciate that they're just trying to have a good time.
I agree with you, Ian.
You know, even Tommy Lee Jones, who I can't stand having a good time, does seem to actually be having a pretty good time with the film overall.
Yeah, like, on just, like, kind of a lighter general note, I do think it is... When we talked about a little bit of like Steve, you mentioned like the standards for stuff has fallen. Like just a summer blockbuster used to look like this. Which, man, I wish that was awesome. When like this is how far your money would stretch you. Like even if you think it's like looks like the TV movie stuff, right? Like I'll take a looks like a TV show in the 90s over looks like a TV show in the 2025. You know, so like there's a lot to like about just. Everyone involved with this kind of knew what they were making, and they just executed it in a way where it's a fun watch, it's an enjoyable experience, and if you want to dive into some deeper films when you're older, you can. And like I gave the little spiel up front about like my childhood with it, so I probably wouldn't be into Batman in the same way if this wasn't as like kid-coded, fun appeal, and then you can still enjoy it when you're older. Like that is nice that there are Batman things that can be enjoyed by a younger audience, that it's not talking down to them, because as the character increasingly became popular for being darker, he did kind of lose his way of like, he was invented as a children's character, and it's hard to call him that these days, to a certain extent.
Oh no, people get mad.
Yeah.
People get mad if you call, like, particularly DC characters nowadays, if you call DC characters children's characters, people get mad. Like, there's that, I'm just always going to take things back to Legos. That's just who I am now. So there's this new Lego Superman set coming out from, you know, kind of like ride the coattails of the movie a little bit. And it's admittedly silly. It's Superman in a mech versus Lex Luthor. And everyone kind of looks at it the same way and goes, why is he the one in the mech? This just seems unfair. and like I saw like a review of it, and I made the mistake. I looked down at the comments, and I didn't see any negative comments. I was quite surprised. So I put my little headcanon, which is, no. See, what happened is he showed up for the fight, and Lex Luthor was in the mech, and then he used his super speed to take Lex out and then repaint the mech in Superman colors, and then came back to regular time, and Lex said, what? And he said, this just seemed more fair. I'm ready to fight when you are. So that was my take on that. And someone replies, well, how about this? How about a Lego set doesn't need headcanon, and instead it's just a set for babies? And I'm like, how about this? What if I told you Superman is a character for babies? And then people got mad at me. He's not just for babies. Like, just stupid shit. So the idea of having DC characters in particularly be appealing to children is just such a weird fucking taboo in this day and age. And I don't understand. We've lost the fucking plot, as the youth say.
Well, and Batman Forever is very definitively a movie designed because kids need to be able to enjoy it in a way Batman Returns wasn't, like you said up the top, right? Mm-hmm. So many people's memories of Batman Forever and Batman and Robin aren't just the movies, but the toys and the commercials and stuff like that. I remember having like a little set of a variety of Batmobiles, all from Batman and Robin. Now, in the movie, there's only one Batmobile that he uses, but the toy was just like the same Batmobile in multiple different colors, and that was awesome as a kid.
Yeah, no, I had like the big Batmobile from this, and like the big light show thing on the front, because this was the neon Batmobile. It like shot out like a spear and stuff, and it was just so fucking cool. I will say, to your earlier point about it just looks kind of cheap and like a TV movie, as much as I do like the look of the Batmobile, the fact that, like, when it's driving down the street, the wings kind of flap does make it look really cheap. Yeah. And I don't love that.
The ears on the Batsuit do the same thing, and that feels kind of distracting to me, where they just kind of wiggle because they're hollow rubber.
Oh, I didn't know. I didn't notice that, and I probably never won't be able to not.
Yeah. But anyway, you were going to try and get onto the Riddler, you said?
Yeah. No one can stop me. I'm getting on the Riddler, sir. Yeah, so Jim Carrey as the Riddler is such an interesting thing here, because it, obviously 89, Jim Carrey's career was not to the point where he could have been even considered for a role like this to be the Joker. And for my 2 cents, I do think Jim Carrey really could have been a great Joker in like the Nolan era, or maybe even like if Snyder had gotten off his ass and made a Batman movie really quick like he just wanted to do. But like Jim Carrey just was not in a place to play the Joker, so they take the character that's, he's kind of like the Joker, they give it to Jim Carrey, and he does 100%. He plays the Riddler like he's the Joker, and I don't think I'll ever fully be able to get over that just from like a comic book perspective. But at the same time, he is so much fun to watch in this. The like weird fucking neon red hair dye that he uses. I don't know what fucking hair growth product and routine he has in this film, because he'll like go out at night and have this weird red dyed hair that like sticks up and is way shorter than his actual, businessman aesthetic hair that he's wearing in other scenes in the movie. And I find that very amusing. But yeah, it's just like this weird, wacky character. Oh, the one scene I do remember vividly from when I watched this movie as a kid is the Riddler going into the Batcave and destroying things. And just, like, Jim Carrey's got that weird condition where his face is just made out of rubber. And so he, like, does the baseball player mouthful of chewing tobacco kind of look before he tosses a bomb. And, like, it's so much fun to watch. It's just so, like, It 100%. It should not work, and I should not be sanctioning this level of buffoonery. But I fucking love it. I can't help myself but to love it because I just love Jim Carrey so much. And this is interesting, like timeline for his career, because this is like when he is literally at the height of his fame, and when he's kind of being essentially typecast, but he's just kind of rolling with it. And then it's interesting to look at more modern things like his portrayal in the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise, where he's playing Robotnik, and he's still doing a lot of the same stuff. He's still playing it as Jim Carrey, but he's selling it in a much different way, where there is still more of a character coming through in the Sonic movies than I think there is here. So I don't know. It's an interesting thing because I think on paper I don't like it, but just as an experience, I quite enjoy it.
I have the same feeling with him here as I do with Nicholson as Joker in '89, where on paper it should not work, but when you're watching it, it really, really works, and it's entirely because of the actor and not for any other reason. I love his insane fanboying over Bruce Wayne. It's so much fun to watch, especially early on before he transforms. And then I wish he kept like the Frank Gorshin '60s outfit for the whole movie. Because like the other outfit isn't bad, but that one is so good.
Yeah, Riddler in the skin tight suit never works for me. I never have liked it.
He looks more creepy in that than he does amusing.
Yeah, I just the suit jacket, it just looks so much more classy and cool. Every design that gives him the skin tight suit, the only one that even kind of worked is the Batman, the cartoon.
Because he was an emo guy, yeah.
Yeah, because he was Marilyn Manson. That's the only time it's kind of worked, and even then, I still would lean to just give him the fucking suit. So no, I 100% agree with that. I do think it's fun that he gets like by this version of the toy costumes. Particularly the gag of the light up jacket that he wears while he's jogging. I think that was. I would be shocked if that was in the script. Let me put it that way. I think that's just Jim Carrey riffing, if I'm being perfectly honest. So I like different level. I like those different outfits to different levels, but just on the concept of, skin tight suit, always a fail. Always a fail. Would always rather prefer the full suit and tie kind of combo.
I like his performance a lot as well. The outfit thing I like, because I'm with you. I prefer him with the suits, but I like the outfits this time because I think it's a good kind of like costume design informing character thing here, where like you open him up and he's like. He doesn't know what outfit to even pick for his supervillain design yet. Like, he's a very indecisive person, and once he gets his outfits, he's constantly changing them, and he's trying to get more extravagant and more. Like, he starts out with just the classic Riddler suit, then is the light up, then it's the skin tight, and then it's like the grand, like, Riddler on the throne thing. Like, it's really cool how he goes from, like, these evolutions as he's wanting people to scream out, like, please notice me, aren't I cool, give me attention. It's from a place of character that surprisingly this Riddler has become very cinematically influential for superhero movies, where like so many bad superhero movies try to rip him off to capture what that was, and there's no one has ever touched what Jim Carrey does with this archetype, which is funny because like this isn't the Riddler's backstory at all, but then it became a backstory that was stolen for other movies. The key to this and what I think makes it work so well is I think it just plays off Kilmer's super stilted, super detached Batman. That this Riddler is so screen hogging and he's so desperate for attention. Like it makes a really nice hero villain duo, and I think they enhance each other a lot.
Yeah, I would agree. Kilmer's Batman is an interesting thing, and I think this is a good time to transition into that, because a lot of the meat, I think, ends up on the cutting room floor. The subplot of Bruce Wayne's repressed memories and stuff is an interesting idea. Dr. Chase Meridian is just way too horny to be a professional therapist.
Honestly, the two biggest reasons to watch the movie right there.
Honestly.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. But like I like a lot of what got left on the cutting room floor for Kilmer. The fucking image of him and just the giant bat is just so fucking cool, and I'm always disappointed that never made it into the movie. Particularly a couple of years ago, they started circulating a like behind the scenes photo of Val Kilmer just posing next to the thing, and it's just give me my fucking man bat in a movie. God damn it, I want it so bad. But it's a really cool dynamic. I don't know. I've had mixed feelings about Val Kilmer lately. I need to look up the name of this movie real quick. So there was a film in the 90s at the height of Val Kilmer's power called The Island of Dr. Moreau.
Oh, yeah. That was a remake. Good times.
Yeah, and it is super, super bad. It is one of the world's most notoriously bad films, and it's bad in such an interesting way, in that they made a documentary about the failure of it. It's called Lost Soul, The Doomed Journey of Richard Stanley's The Island of Dr. Moreau. So Richard Stanley was like this kind of indie director, and he always had like a thing for The Island of Dr. Moreau, and he had like this really cool vision for what the movie should be, and he got, you know, some indie film success, so he got, you know, okayed to make a big budget movie, and Val Kilmer signed on to be the starring role. But then throughout the documentary, I learned a lot about just the kind of famous that Val Kilmer was, and it's not nice to speak ill of the dead, but Val Kilmer sabotaged this dude's dream movie, and then fucking, what's his name, that played Dr. Moreau himself, Marlon Brando put the nails in the fucking coffin. But Val Kilmer, like, bullied people on the set, stood behind, like, camera operators and flicked hot ashes from his cigarette onto their necks just to bug them. Got into tiffs with Brando about who would come out of the trailer first, all kinds of shit. So I can't imagine that he was much better on the set of Batman Forever, so poor Joel Schumacher.
Well, that's part of why he's not back for Batman and Robin, is that him and Schumacher just didn't get along.
No, it doesn't surprise me. He seems like, just from what I've learned about Val Kilmer, he seemed like he was a very difficult person to work with, which is really disappointing, because I quite like a lot of his movies. I love Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. I love Oliver Stone's The Doors with Val Kilmer playing Jim Morrison. And I quite like this movie, so yeah, I was quite disappointed to kind of learn that Val Kilmer was a bit of an asshole, at least at this point in time. You know, it might just be the way the Hollywood machine works and spits people out, but yeah.
That's actually also the specifically a reason for why he didn't do the sequel to this movie is because he went off to do that movie, Ian. He was Schumacher was going to work with him again. I guess their relationship had repaired at that point, because they did have difficulties on set, but it seems by the time the movie came out they were cool. But he said, I know, but it's Brando, man. I gotta do it. So, like, he would have, and that was like a last minute call. They didn't know that was going to happen until like the umpteenth hour, and they had to scramble to get George Clooney. So that's the full behind the scenes on that one, which is interesting.
Yeah, if you want a good time though, definitely watch Lost Soul. Because just the details I gave is the bare fucking minimum of the craziness of the production of this movie. Like, you always hear that, like, oh, sometimes learning more about the making of the movie is more interesting than the movie. This is the holy grail of that. So if you get a chance, watch Lost Soul. It's a really good fucking documentary. And the crazy antics just crack me the fuck up. I don't want to spoil them. It's just a fucking wild ride. So anyway, but yeah, I do like Val Kilmer's performance in this. He's not getting to do a lot. Certainly I prefer, like, Bale or even, like, Affleck, performance-wise, as far as just being Batman. I do think that Kilmer's better than Clooney, and I don't know if this is a controversial take or not, but I do like him better than Keaton, though I would have a hard time arguing for it, because Keaton just has more to do, unfortunately. But yeah,
Kilmer is a good actor, and has a very unique screen presence in everything that he does, and so like I like him. And the thing about Batman is we've never miscast Batman. Like the actor who plays Batman's always good. I don't think any of the major movie Batmans do a bad job for any reason. But like it's sort of like ranking the Mission Impossible movies. I'm like, wow, that was good. 5 out of 10. Because there's so many other good ones. So like he is fine in this movie. I have no strong feelings about him whatsoever. He probably falls much lower on my tier list of Batman actors, only because he doesn't do a whole lot. I would even put Clooney above him because I feel like Clooney's charm as Bruce Wayne is so magnetic. I don't care about anything else in that movie. And I really like Affleck as Batman. I love Pattinson as Batman. I think Bale probably gives, like, on paper the best performance of the Batman actor, and I love Keaton. I don't know if I would even say I like Kilmer more than Adam West, to be honest with you. So he probably falls to the end, but that's not because he's bad. It's just because Batman's always well cast.
okay.
Kilmer for me is probably my favorite part of this movie. I really, really love Val Kilmer as Batman. He's definitely in my top echelon. Like you guys have said, like all the Batman are pretty good, so it's hard to rank them specifically just off the top of the dome. And we did a whole video about ranking the Batman. I'm sure it's probably outdated at this point. But he's definitely up there for me. And the big defining part, especially about this rewatch, that puts him definitively over Keaton and a lot of the others, is he just cares, which is like a weird thing to say about Batman, but like this dude, I always fully believe that he's here to save people, which is like rare for Batman to have that feeling on screen. But like it helps, first of all, that he looks like a Neil Adams drawing. The cowl looks like he wears the cowl really well, which is something a lot of the Batman actors don't actually do. They don't have like the face for it, but Val Kilmer looks like Batman. Then when he has the voice, it's not distracting, it's deeper, but it still fits who he is as a person. And he acts so detached and so like stilted in how he talks that it's kind of robotic, but like it really works in comparison to how large the movie is. That just makes him feel like I'll use a Doctor Who comparison with like the third Doctor, where like the third Doctor walks in a room and you just feel like you're safe, like he's just gonna fix the problem. This Batman feels like he's got it under control. Like he feels like he's got everything sorted. He doesn't have to like the Batman part of his life, got it easy. He's sorted. It's the Bruce Wayne part that he's really struggling with, and I think especially because this movie can be seen kind of in isolation, I think it's really interesting when you do consider it as the third movie from the Burton movies, and like we are now reckoning with the fact of like how much of the Keaton Batman was kind of just fully devolving himself into revenge and kind of killing people without much of a second thought. And then we get to this version of Batman who kind of feels like he's damned himself as a result of that and is trying his best to like overcompensate. And can he even be Bruce Wayne as a thing? And I know that's something that gets talked about in Batman Returns as well, and then in Batman 89. I just think Kilmer sells me on it a lot more. Like when Kilmer does it, I believe it's the character Bruce Wayne. When Keaton does it, I feel like it's a separate character that is just wearing a Batman costume. Like I feel like Kilmer is playing the guy I recognize from the comics, the guy I want to see, which is obviously a very fan. Like it doesn't necessarily dictate the quality of the movie. It just, my personal preference for that is enhanced as a result. The fact that we get to spend time going into why he even is Batman is really, really cool. And we get that whole line where there's some really great bits where, for example, with him and Alfred, where he talks about like I killed them, and he's like, oh, he killed them, Harvey Two-Face, and Alfred like pauses him and is like, you said I, sir, and like that's a very like classic Batman kind of line to me. Of just like it touches on the core of the character where he's like so guilt-ridden about something he couldn't have possibly done. And one of the sad things about Kilmer's performance is my favorite scene of his is something that's deleted. And I don't think this is like a crime that it got deleted or anything. I don't think it changes my view on the movie. But it's something, if you like this movie, I would try and seek it out just because I think it kind of puts everything together for me for why he acts the way he does and what he's trying to do. And it makes the final scene with him and Riddler really good. It's like he's in the cave, he opens up the book, and this whole movie he's thought that he begged his parents to go to the movies and it's his fault. And he reads the last line on the page and it says... he didn't get to read it when he was a kid because he was so distraught. Yeah, go ahead. And he says his dad was like, "Oh well, Bruce has his heart set on this movie, but me and Martha really want to go see Zara. We'll have to see Bruce's movie next week." And then he just breaks down and he's just like, "It's not my fault. It wasn't my fault." And like, it's a really powerful moment for the specific version of Batman, considering 89 to returns to this. It does feel like he's completed that arc the whole way through. And I don't know, it definitely wasn't something I'm sure they were 100% thinking about when they were making it, but it's one of those... Go ahead.
Sorry.
No, you're all good. It's just one of those little character beats that it really enhances the whole thing for me, and it just makes me really like this dude as Batman. And when he gets that moment at the end, it's almost like Tom King, Kyle coded, where he's like, "I'm Batman because I choose to be." And I think that's just a great line, a great scene. I like how much focus he gets in this movie. So that's something I disagree with you guys, where I think he does get a lot to do in this movie as Batman. And I think it's something that gives him a more complete version of the character as an adaptation than the previous ones, and even some of the subsequent ones compared to. Like, he feels like you could drop this guy in a 90s Batman comic and he'd fit.
It's interesting to think about him in the context of like the third movie in a sequence and not just like his own one-off thing, because I think Kilmer's performance is very much in line with what Keaton was doing. Because Keaton's Bruce Wayne was a guy who was very much trying to figure out who the hell Bruce Wayne was. There's that joke in the beginning of 89 where Vicky Vale asks him, like, which one of these guys is Bruce Wayne? And Bruce is like, "I don't know." And in that moment, it seems like he's just kind of like playing a trick on them. But in the context of that what that Myers movie's narrative is, it's Bruce Wayne doesn't really have any idea who he is, and he's trying to figure that out. And so much of that movie is Keaton kind of going from scene to scene, looking at things with kind of like a weird, curious whimsy that he's trying to square with the way he's decided to set up his life. And I think Batman 89 Returns ultimately lean towards a very optimistic note at the end, because the whole sort of statement of Batman is, unlike Penguin, Joker, or Catwoman, Bruce was able to kind of successfully mesh the two parts of himself together, and he makes that work in a way that other people can't. And the tragedy is that other people can't, but he figured it out. And so
Right.
when Keaton or when Kilmer shows up in the third movie, there is a little bit of like his performance is very similar to what Keaton's doing, of like the Bruce Wayne persona is one that has people gravitate towards him because he's Bruce Wayne in the abstract, but him as a person is still playing things kind of very childlike and disassociated.
Sorry, I'm back. I missed all that.
No, you're good. You're good. We were just talking about Keaton. I think of the four movies, if you want to watch them as a series, Clooney's is by far the one that's most detached from like a coherent character arc. But at the very least, I think you can, like Alfie was saying, make the connection of Kilmer and Keaton are very much playing the same Bruce Wayne going forward, and Clooney is off in his own little world.
That's an interesting idea. I don't know. I full disclosure, I do see these movies, Batman Forever and Batman and Robin, as like their own separate franchise from the rest of the series. The Burton films and the Schumacher, I do really do see as their own separate thing, because just the only actors that they keep are what? Alfred and Gordon.
Yeah.
So it's such a hard divide, and like with such a big tonal shift.
And I'm with you on that. Like, I always view it as the Schumacher films and the Burton films. I think with Forever in particular, there's at least more of an attempt to pretend like they're connected, and by Batman and Robin, they're not even trying.
Yeah,
Forever feels
it's
to
funny
me.
because
Go ahead, Ian.
you say that they're not even trying, but you're like, Batman and Robin is the one that has like more of the references to Burton, because I remember there's like that scene where you see Arkham Asylum and there's like the Riddler costume, but there's also Joker's costume, which doesn't even make fucking sense because he's dead.
Well, that's partly because I feel like Batman and Robin just has like references to everything. Everything's a joke or a pun. Like they make a reference to Superman, but it's not connected to anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this movie has an interesting sense of humor to like start off with I'll get drive-through.
What I was gonna say, just as this film is like, no, it's okay. Just as this film is like a time capsule, and as like the fact that it is, because I tend to view it separately on its own as well. But it's a nice little thing that if you do want to view it as a trilogy, I do think it actually does work as best as it could, right? What's interesting to me about this and like the future of Batman and like superhero movies in general is I feels like this was the last attempt and the only time it worked of treating these characters like they're eternal in film. Like it feels like after Batman Forever, you would just make Batman movies like James Bond and you just keep going like forever, like, which is funny that it's the title, right? But like it feels like this is the one attempt where like there wasn't any self-conscious nature of like, oh well, we need to reboot it or we need to do it. It just feels like the next Batman adventure, and then you could just do the next Batman adventure as long as you wanted past this point. And we've never replicated that, and it's always something people talk, like Kevin Feige talks about that for the MCU, and it's like, that's never going to happen. Like they definitely will never do that, but it's an interesting concept that's so tied to other franchises that go on for that long. And I wonder if there was an alt timeline where Batman Forever, we all the subsequent Batman movies and also subsequent Batman actors were just in the same universe, the same way they are in the comics, and what would that look like with the tone shifts? Because the comics change tone all the time as well, so like there's nothing new to that. It's just a funny image in my head.
And maybe this is a whole separate topic, but I guess I don't entirely understand what you mean on that front, because I feel like Batman Forever is very much a product of Batman movies must constantly be made. We need to make another Batman movie. It doesn't matter what we did last time. We need more Batman movies. Who will
That's part of what I mean, yeah.
movie for us? And I feel like that's not different at all from the MCU or anything else. It's like, we must make Spider-Man movies. Who cares about the Spider-Man story? Who wants to tell a Spider-Man story? It doesn't matter. We need to make Spider-Man movies. I feel like Batman Forever is... I don't think it's the end of us doing something. I think it's the start of our current downfall of these kinds of movies.
Oh, controversial. I don't know. I see the pitfall that you might be falling in there, Steve, but I do think I lean a little bit more with Alfie, where this one has a bit more of a mythic sense to it that doesn't feel like it's it needed to go as heavily into only franchise. Whereas like, no, you'll always be able to tell stories with these characters, like celebrating the eternally young side of the superhero story, and doing that in that James Bond kind of way. Whereas you have like the MCU stuff, which, you know, we don't want to recast, we don't want to do this, that, or the other thing. We want to, you know, just pay attention to trends and do whatever's popular. And whenever there's like anything that may be a little bit like silly and comic booky, well, let's make a joke about it, and that makes it okay. Kind of vibes. And he just like showed up like some kind of an incredible like Hulk thing. Yeah, that's so natural. So, just that kind of vibe. I don't know if I 100% agree with Alfie, but I see where he's coming from on that.
I guess I just have a hard time seeing, like, ideologically what the difference is between those two things, because like what part of why I love the Burton movies is Burton's Batman movies and Nolan's Batman movies are two of the only real examples of, here's a filmmaker with ideas and voices using the superhero franchise as it exists to find themselves. Nolan became a better filmmaker because of The Dark Knight. Burton became a better filmmaker because of Batman 89. All the other examples of good directors making superhero movies like Donner on Superman or Raimi on Spider-Man, they were already kind of who they were. Donner's style didn't change because of Superman. Raimi's style didn't change because of Spider-Man. But Nolan's and Burton's very clearly did. I think Forever is very much in the line of studio needs Batman movie. Who can we hire to make Batman movie? And every superhero movie really in this mold feels like it has that idea to me of like, if we can get a director who's competent, great, but at the end of the day, the point is we need Batman movie. Doesn't matter if there's a story to tell, we just need Batman movie. And I guess I just think of that whole proposition as really cynical in general.
I guess the difference I would point to is, yes, it is corporate, and yes, it is cynical, but it's a way through the corporate system to make art in a way that's forward-thinking versus what's so dominant now, which is you can only keep it going but by referring to what's already been done. Whereas the Batman Forever model is more so like, yes, we need to hire someone to make a Batman movie, but what's your take on the Batman? Like, it's being, I guess it's just a little bit more honest. Like, yes, it is corporate, yes, it is part of that, but I don't think there's that, at least in that specific form of system, I don't have that much of an issue for acknowledging, like, if a director wants to make a blockbuster movie because they got work for hire, I still think you can make good art in that system through the lens of, well, we're still trying to do something new.
Yeah, fair enough. I don't know how much more we have, but I do want to talk for a minute about Nicole Kidman and Chase Meridian.
Go ahead.
Oh my goodness.
All right, so
Is she? I have a question because Steve's read every single Batman comic and I have not. Chase Meridian, fully original character for this movie, yes?
She has since appeared in the comics, in the New 52.
But she was original at the time of production.
Yes. She was
Okay.
she was original to this movie. She shows up in the New 52, and she shows up, I think, a little bit before the New 52. She's not like a big character. Like, I don't think she has like dozens of comic book appearances or whatever. But it does exist in the comics at a certain point, and it's all after this movie. Yes.
Okay.
So Nicole Kidman
curious.
as Chase Meridian. I miss when superhero movies could be horny, and I miss when they could be horny in a way that was kind of infectious and fun to watch. There was an essay a few years ago about how everyone is sexy but no one's horny. So like you've got Chris Evans and Chris Hemsworth with like these 8-packs and shit, but there's nothing horny about it, you know? It's just people who are extremely pretty and jacked, but there's no like sexual energy. Nicole Kidman is probably the reason we don't do that anymore. Because she took all of the horny energy in the universe and channeled it into this movie. She is so ready to fuck Batman on the pavement from the first scene she appears in. It's awesome. I love it. She's a great actress. She does a really good job in this. Chase Meridian, though, as a character, do not like her. I don't really understand a lot of what the dialogue she says, because so much of it just sounds like generic psychobabble. She really is just kind of like a vehicle to give Bruce's like small piecemeal realizations about his past. But as a compelling love interest, I think she's a huge step down from Catwoman in the previous movie. She's better than Kim Basinger in the first movie insofar as that she actually has chemistry and a dynamic with Val Kilmer. But like as a character, I don't really love Chase Meridian. I just love how incredibly horny Nicole Kidman is.
I think we can all agree that we need more horny Nicole Kidman in our lives.
Yes, we do. Absolutely.
The theory I have is just like she kind of had an agreement with Joel Schumacher and did him a favor. It's just like, look, I'm already gonna get flack for being a gay dog. Like, I put nipples on the bat suit. Like, can you just like really try to fuck him? Like, I need you to distract everyone that this isn't a gay Batman movie. Like, just try out. And she was like, no problem, Joel, you're my friend, I got your back, I've got this. And she whipped him out. She had the sheet on. there was a Kevin Smith joke in his commentary on this movie where he's like, actually drops the she and her bush is in the bat symbol, and it's like that's the level we're at here, man. Like, so she had a job to do, she did it. She helped sell Robin to the mass audiences because the studios were going to be worried about that. So like, I feel like this is the biggest case of like Joel Schumacher just needed to have a sexy love interest, and she did it in a way that also helped again serve as a vehicle to let Bruce work through some of his stuff. And she's got some fun lines in there. She does a good. She's got chemistry. She carries it. So inoffensive. Did a good job and did a community service. Sadly, though, Steve is right. She stole the horniness from this point on. So that was her biggest sin.
If every superhero movie was even like 10% this horny, we would be in a much better state in the world.
See, Steve's speaking my language.
Just 10% of whatever the fuck she was bringing in this movie. Have you ever seen anyone look at Batman like that and be so adamant about how much she wants to fuck him just with her eyes? It's insane. Absolutely insane.
In high school, it was guys in black leather. Now it's men in black rubber.
I know, it's so fucking good. And she makes the joke about Catwoman in skin-tight leather and a whip, and I'm like, please don't put that image in my head. I cannot take this. We might have to take a 20-minute break before we finish watching this movie.
20 minutes. I only need like 2 amateur numbers.
I didn't say we were just going once.
Oh, okay, my bad. 10 times. There we go.
Exactly. She's fantastic in that. Her character not so much, but she is fantastic.
It's interesting. I didn't realize that she'd gotten adapted in the comics. I see the image that Alfie just posted. I'm like, well, that just looks like Harley Quinn. And so my next immediate thought was, oh man, that'd be like a cool character to have show up in like a Harley book.
Yeah, there you go. She was apparently she showed up in like the modern era because she had a different design before this. She showed up in the modern era in the Tinian Batman run is where she got her Nicole Kidman redesign in the comics. And she's just around.
That's cool. Yeah, no, that'd be like a fun thing. I went to school with this girl, Chase Meridian, but she got arrested for sexually abusing her patients by making them dress up like Batman.
Best therapist ever. Who on earth would press charges?
Chase Meridian, where it's the Harley Quinn backstory, but instead of her being in love with Joker, she's in love with Batman.
Let's go.
Idea.
Bring Nicole Kidman back.
I could go for it. Yeah. I don't know, it's an interesting film. I don't think it's anywhere near my perfect Batman movie. I don't think that's probably like, there's a topic of Geeky Gentleman to go for. The perfect Batman movie.
The Batman, honestly.
The perfect Batman movie.
Batman
not the
Returns,
shittiest Batman
surely.
All right, let's calm down.
Batman 66.
Now you're talking.
All right, Lego Batman.
That's another good one. You had one bad one on that mix.
Yeah, and it was the Batman. Anyway, so I think we'll wrap it up there. We'll go ahead and do a quick score. I'm gonna go first just so I can steal Steve's thunder, and I'm gonna give this 3 out of 5 horny Nicole Kidmans.
Fuck you so hard.
Exactly what Nicole Kidman's gonna do the second I put on the Batman cowl.
I will give it 2 out of 5 Two-Face Angel Devil harem girlfriends.
One of them's Drew Barrymore.
Yeah, I know. It's awesome.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
I saw the credits. It was like Drew Barrymore. I'm like, fucking, who's Drew Barrymore in this? Because I know Nicole Kidman's the love interest.
Yeah.
Like,
Drew Barrymore is
through
good
like,
angel.
oh shit. Yeah. I was not ready for that one. I was surprised.
No, her name pops up in the opening credits, so I was on the lookout for her all the way through.
Yeah. It's quite the, not before she was famous. She was already famous, and then she just did this randomly.
Yeah.
It's kind of wild.
For me, I'll give this. I'll be nice, so everyone else was a little more scared. I'll give it 4 out of 5. Showmanships.
Alrighty. Everyone, thanks so much for watching. Until next time, I'm the Philosopher.
I am the champion of the oppressed Batnips.
And I would like Nicole Kidman to oppress me.
We are your geeky gentlemen, and we'll be discussing things.